My name is Megan Mary Finnerty. And usually I don't tell people my full name because people always assume that then they know everything about you, like you're Irish Catholic and you're from the Midwest. And then it's true. They know everything about me. And so it also means that I have a grandmother, and her name was Mary Lally Finnerty, and I'm named after her. So when I was born, I have a twin sister named Maureen. She got my Nana's name Joyce. I got my grandma's name Mary, and then my parents were like, yes, grandma's chick. So my grandma Mary lived in my town, and she lost the privileges of driving when I was still relatively young, and so we saw her a lot, right? Because my mom would drive her around everywhere, and she lived really close by. And, you know, so she was always like coming over for dinner, or we were always going to the grocery store with her, or we were going to bake cookies at Christmas or something like that. But before you like get this Rockwellian picture of my grandma, let me disabuse you of that, because she was like well-intentioned, but she was the kind of old lady that would say terrible things about people that weren't white. Seriously, right? Because you know these like old Irish ladies. I assume no one in the room is like them. You just know about them. She also is the kind of old lady that was truly old. Like my mother said that my grandma was old, like the minute she met her. My parents have been married for 33 years at this point. I did the math. I was like, she couldn't have been that old when you met her. And my mother was like, no, even your Aunt Bobby says Mary was always old. Oh, okay. So my grandma was also old in the way that she was convinced that she always had a horrible disease. And like, she didn't. She was fine. She was always fine. My parents took amazing care of her. But she would talk so regularly about having whatever disease it was that my mom made this up, that she had Logie Duodenal, which then my mom said sounded like, you know, like a Cuban baseball player, because we watched a lot of baseball. I don't know what that was about when I was 7, but now or later I think it's pretty funny. So whenever my mom would be like, oh, what did you do with grandma? We'd be like, oh, she talked about Logie Duodenal. And really that was just our shorthand for like, I don't know, I tried to tell grandma that I was like getting straight A's and going to prom with the captain of the football team, but instead we talked about how she feels bad, whatever. And you know, she wasn't all bad, but she was one of those kind of like old ladies that could take any good news you had and then like be sad that someone had died and they weren't here to celebrate it with you, but you don't know that someone. They died so long ago that your parents don't even talk about that someone. And she's like teary. I never understood my grandma until I read Angela's Ashes, and I am not overstating the fact. If you haven't read it, go ahead and read it. It was on the Diane Rehm Book Club last week. Jesus, Mary, and Joseph, and I mean it. Like, everyone dies because the parents spend all the money on booze. I later learned that like my grandma was born in the United States, went back to Ireland, and then her parents spent all their money on booze, babies died, and they came back to the United States, and she still remembers Ireland as being like akin to Disneyland. She always hated America. I'm like, what? We came here because it was so bad there, your people couldn't even grow potatoes. So, this brings me to today. So like, and you know, like whenever we left my grandma's house, my mom would have to debrief us and be like, don't repeat anything you heard. None of the words she used are appropriate. She also would say GD, which I will not say, and when my friends say it, because I totally went to Catholic school as a kid, when my friends take the Lord's name in vain, I'm like, psh, Lord's name in vain.
It's true.
It's horrible when people say that, and she would say it all the time, like she had some right to say it because she'd suffered. Who knows? The story ends well, though, for Mary. Turns out she was totally depressed her whole life, and when she finally had to move out of her house and we put her in a really nice assisted living facility, they regulated her diet, put her on antidepressants. My aunt swears it was the best 4 years of my grandma's life. So, you know, like, that's okay for her. So, you know, we never took it we never took it personally that our grandma could, like, fail to celebrate any moment in our lives meaningfully. But when I moved out to Phoenix, I felt deeply bereft of family, and so when I found out that the Irish clan, the Irish people in Arizona, really pushed their St. Patrick's Day pageant with the Colleen, she's like the queen of the St. Patrick's Day parade, and I thought to myself, I'm Irish. I never entered a pageant in my life, but I was like, I might enter. I am so lonely and I have nothing to do. So I entered. And then I told my bosses about it, and they were like, oh my God, you're totally gonna go, and then you're gonna write the story, and that's gonna be the story that fronts our St. Patrick's Day coverage. And then I was like, oh, snap, I am so committed now. Because it also was like a big deal that I got the front of the living section, because I was very young, and like getting the chance to get the front of the living section was like big deal. So I was in over my head. And I started telling people that I was gonna be in this ethnic pageant. And I'm not calling it a beauty pageant, because it wasn't. And I was really surprised at some of the stuff people would say to me when I was like, yeah, I'm gonna be in this Irish pageant, and it's like real girls entering this thing, and they have talents and skills and blah, blah, blah. People were like, what's gonna be your talent? I was like, frankly, I don't know. And then they came up with suggestions, and they were like, are you gonna bare knuckle box? Oh, you're laughing. Wait, you'll feel bad for laughing in a second because you're racist. They were like, are you going to just drink shots of Jameson? Are you going to have a lot of babies? What? I don't know. Like, other stuff was just like, you know, are you going to step dance, which I thought was pretty legit, but I was like, if you've seen me walk in high heels, you know that's pretty much out. But mostly people just said kind of like god-awful things about Irish people, and I was like, oh man, it's kind of funny, but it's also kind of weird, right? Like, wow, what ethnic group would you just make fun of for having alcoholism problems or having a lot of babies? We are Catholic, this is our legacy. So I thought to myself, man, really, like, that's my people? We also have famous poets. We contributed enormously to the canon of fantastic literature and beer, but seriously, these are our people, right? Like, so I thought to myself, okay, I called my dad and I was like, Dad, A, I don't have a talent, so I'm screwed. B, people have said some crazy stuff to me, and like, I guess I just didn't realize that America is seething with anti-Irish sentiment. And it was like, they're not so much anymore, but they used to. So my dad was like, you know, the Irish are really known for work ethic, which is obviously what Mike Finnerty would say, because my dad is a hard worker. And like, I think if any of us developed any skills, it would just be that like we had calluses on our hands. That would be legacy. So my dad was like, listen, you know, the Irish used to be oppressed, and then they worked hard, and they were hard workers, whatever. So he says, you should tell a story, you should tell a speech about the Irish work ethic. And he personalizes it by telling me about my great-grandfathers and my grandfathers, people that I'd never really heard a lot about, and how they helped build the steel mills in Pennsylvania and Northwest Indiana that my father later worked in, and my dad still works as a steel recycler. And so I thought, okay, I have a speech, ethnic pride. This is gonna kill. I'm gonna kill it at this thing. Because what these other girls are gonna sing, but I'm gonna be like, yes, we're hard workers, we're industrious, we're not drunks. So I basically like spent the rest of the time preparing by like buying a dress. And I got ready. I got ready for my speech, and it turns out I'm not that hard of a worker. I waited till like the day of to prepare this speech. I don't know what I'm thinking. I was fresh out of college where, you know, you can just like fake your way through everything, start everything last minute. I did okay. I got an honors degree. But turns out you just can't coast on that shit forever. So I cobbled together my speech. I know that I've underplayed my hand. I'm humiliated before I even show up because I'm just like, this isn't going to be good. I haven't lived up to my legacy at all. I'm a loser. Whatever. I get there. And I realized immediately, whatever degree of nervousness or shame I was feeling at not preparing this speech in an adequate amount of time was way less than I should have felt. 2 girls launched an Irish step dancing organization. 3 ended up singing "Oh Danny Boy" without any irony. Thank you for laughing, because I was like, what? You know, another like started some Irish cultural heritage outreach program, which is like, what is that? But I knew that I was like way, way, way outgunned. And I got up on stage and I was like just sick to my stomach, and I was like, okay, well, you know, like this is gonna be what it is. I get up there and I start telling like the first minute of my speech, and I'm like, yeah, I got this. Like, yes, oppressed, railroads, steel, something. And then I just stopped talking, literally like just stopped talking, which if you know me, you can't imagine. And, you know, like I'm in this, you know, this like church area stage thing. There had been chicken marsala, which I thought was weird, because I, like, but why not serve us Irish food? And there's just all these people filled with ethnic pride waiting for me to finish my speech. And I am like, dying up here. And then I look at them and I was like, well, I write for a living, I don't speak for a living. And then they good-naturedly laugh, which is the same as them being like, who is this girl? And then suddenly, like, I remember the rest of my completely lame speech. And so the end of my story is, you should all just be really grateful that my forebears were much harder workers than I am.